Wow. This past week in crypto, um, it's kind of felt like riding one of those roller coasters. It just kind of like keeps changing its tracks while you're on it. I mean,
Yeah.
huge price swings, new ways to invest, even like big legal changes, and even like efforts to like get more people understanding crypto.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's been a crazy week, just like a ton of new stuff coming out, and it can definitely be overwhelming trying to keep up with it all.
Yeah, for sure. So that's why we're here. We've been going through like all the latest news and analysis and kind of like picked out the 5 most important things that we think you really need to know right now. This deep dive is like your cheat sheet to really understand what's moving the crypto market this week and maybe even where things are headed. Our mission is pretty simple. We just want to cut through all the noise and give you a clear and concise understanding of these key events.
Yeah. Straight to the point. No fluff.
Yeah. Exactly. All grounded in, the best and latest information we can find.
Okay, so let's get started. And let's start with the big one, Bitcoin. I mean, it's been kind of just hanging around that $85,000 mark. So what's the big takeaway there?
Well, what's really interesting about that $85,000 level is that it's like a crucial point that a lot of analysts are watching super closely.
Mm-hmm.
Bitcoin's been rallying, and now it's basically testing whether it can really solidify its position above that price.
Okay.
Traders call this a resistance level. You can kind of think of it like a ceiling that the price has had trouble breaking through in
Oh,
the
but I
past.
see. So like it keeps bumping its head on that ceiling and can't get through.
Yeah, exactly. So if it manages to close out a week above $85,000, it'll be a really bullish signal.
Okay. And what does that, what does a bullish signal mean? What would we expect to see if that happened?
Well, it basically means the market is feeling optimistic, that there's this upward momentum and that it could continue. And the next target that a lot of people are looking at is $90,000. Wow, okay, so that's the optimistic view. But what if it doesn't break through that resistance? What's the potential downside risk here?
Well, if that resistance at 85,000 holds strong, then we could see the price pull back. Some analysts are even saying it could drop down to around 76,000.
Mm.
So,
Yeah,
it's really a delicate balance right now.
yeah. So there's a lot riding on this
Absolutely.
$85,000 mark. So it's not just about what's happening within the crypto market itself.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I mean, I remember reading something about like larger economic forces that could be playing a role here too.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, things like U.S. trade policies and, the worries about inflation, those are all external factors that could either, help push Bitcoin higher or potentially hold it back.
I see.
These kind of like wider economic conditions, they often influence how investors feel about different types of assets, and that includes cryptocurrencies.
Right. So it's like a reminder that even though crypto can feel like its own separate world, it's still connected to what's happening in the larger financial system.
And
Okay. And Bitcoin's performance often kind of sets the tone for the rest of the crypto market, doesn't it?
for sure, Bitcoin is still considered a leading indicator.
Yeah.
So what it does can have a big impact on other cryptocurrencies.
Okay. So it's like the bellwether. It kind of tells us where things might be going.
Exactly.
Okay, great. So let's move on to something that's relatively new in terms of investment products, Solana ETFs. We saw some interesting stuff happening there this week.
Yeah, definitely. This was a big step for Solana. We saw the launch of not one, but two ETFs that are designed to track the future price of Solana.
Okay, now for someone who's maybe new to the crypto world, can you explain why the launch of an ETF is such a big deal?
Sure. So ETFs are a really common way to invest in traditional finance.
Yeah.
They're regulated and people are familiar with them. And what they do is they allow investors to kind of get exposure to an asset like Solana without actually having to directly buy and hold the cryptocurrency itself,
Right.
which can sometimes be, a little bit complicated.
Yeah, you got to set up wallets and deal with exchanges and all that.
Exactly. So ETFs basically bridge this gap between traditional investing and crypto. They make it a
Mhm.
lot more accessible, and that could potentially bring a lot of new money into the market.
Interesting. So it's about lowering the barrier to entry.
Exactly.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Now, for those who might not be familiar, can you give us a little background on Solana? What makes it stand out?
Well, Solana is often talked about as like a competitor to Ethereum.
Oh,
And the main reason for that is because it's really good at processing transactions quickly
quickly.
and cheaply. Compared to Ethereum, Solana can handle a much higher volume of transactions at a much lower cost.
Okay, that's pretty important.
Yeah, and that's why it's become really popular for a bunch of different applications, especially in areas where speed and low fees are super important.
Right.
Plus, it's got a really active developer community, which is great.
So it's got a lot going for it.
Yeah.
So these ETF launches, it sounds like it's more than just new ways to invest. I mean, it's kind of signaling something about how institutional investors are starting to view the crypto space beyond just Bitcoin and Ethereum, right?
Exactly. It's showing that institutions are getting more comfortable with exploring and investing in altcoins,
Altcoins.
which is just a term for cryptocurrencies other than Bitcoin and Ethereum.
Okay.
And, right after those ETFs launched, Solana's price jumped over 5%
Wow.
to around $133. So clearly the market is excited about this.
Yeah, that's a pretty big jump. I mean, what could be some of the longer-term effects of this growing institutional interest in Solana?
Well, if you kind of zoom out and look at the bigger picture, these ETFs could lead to even more people using Solana and more investment flowing into the whole ecosystem. And that could make it even more competitive with Ethereum in areas like DeFi and NFTs.
Wow, that's a big deal. Okay, let's shift gears a bit and talk about El Salvador. They've been in the news a lot for adopting Bitcoin as legal tender, and it seems like they're really doubling down on their commitment to crypto with a new focus on education.
Absolutely. El Salvador is a really fascinating story in the crypto world right now. And this week we saw a big name, Cathie Wood, getting involved in their efforts to educate the public about crypto.
Oh yeah, she's pretty famous in the finance world, isn't she?
Yeah, she's like a rock star investor.
Okay. So how does she get involved with El Salvador?
She gave the very first lecture for El Salvador's new CUBO AI public education program.
That's cool.
Yeah, the program is all about helping people in El Salvador understand cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology and hopefully encourage innovation.
Okay, and having Cathie Wood involved definitely adds a lot of credibility to that.
For sure. It really shows how committed El Salvador is to integrating blockchain technology into different parts of its society.
So it's not just about using Bitcoin as currency, it's about educating people about the underlying technology too. And the whole world has been watching El Salvador's experiment pretty closely, haven't they? I mean, ever since they made that initial move.
Absolutely. Everybody's curious to see how this plays out in the long run.
Yeah.
I mean, there are a lot of questions about the economic and social impacts.
Yeah. It's like a real-time case study.
For sure.
So it kind of begs the question, could El Salvador's approach become a model for other countries that are thinking about adopting digital currencies?
That's a really big question that a lot of people are debating right now. I don't think there's an easy answer because every country is different,
Right.
but El Salvador's experience, both the good and the bad, will definitely be valuable for other nations that are exploring this.
It's a fascinating experiment to watch unfold.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, moving on. We saw a really big legal development this week that caused quite a stir in the market. The SEC dropping its lawsuit against Ripple.
Yeah, that was huge. Probably one of the biggest stories of the week in crypto.
Okay, so for those who haven't been following this legal battle, can you give us a quick recap of what the lawsuit was all about?
Basically, the SEC was arguing that XRP, the cryptocurrency that's connected to Ripple, should be classified as a security under U.S. law.
Okay.
And that classification is super important because it determines how XRP can be regulated, traded, and used.
So it's like a fundamental question about what XRP actually is.
Exactly.
Okay, and the SEC dropping the case?
Yeah.
This is a major win for Ripple, right?
Absolutely. No question about it. This lawsuit has been a huge headache for Ripple for a long time. It's created a lot of uncertainty about their business and the future of XRP.
Okay.
So getting rid of that legal cloud is a big relief.
And how did the market react to this news?
Well, XRP's price shot up almost 10% right after the announcement was made.
Wow.
It went up to almost $2.5. So that tells you how positive the market sentiment is now that this uncertainty is gone.
Yeah, so beyond Ripple itself, could this have bigger implications for how crypto is regulated in the U.S.?
That's a really interesting question, and a lot of people think it could be a turning point. While this case doesn't give us all the answers, it could set a precedent for how regulators approach similar cases in the future.
Okay, so it's something that other crypto companies will be watching closely.
Yeah.
So with this legal hurdle out of the way, what do you think is next for XRP?
Well, now that there's more legal clarity, XRP has more room to grow, especially in areas like cross-border payments, which is one of Ripple's main focuses.
Okay.
And we could see new partnerships and integrations happening now that the regulatory uncertainty is gone.
Yeah, so this could be a big boost to them.
Definitely.
Okay, great. Finally, let's talk about Ethereum. They're continuing to make upgrades to their network and recently launched the Hoodie testnet.
Yeah, Ethereum is always pushing the boundaries in blockchain. And this Hoodie testnet is another step in their efforts to constantly improve.
Okay, so can you explain why these testnets are so important for Ethereum's development?
Sure. So testnets are basically like a safe space for developers to experiment with new features and upgrades before they go live on the main Ethereum network.
Oh, okay. So it's like a practice run.
Exactly. It lets them find and fix any bugs or problems in a controlled environment so that the actual upgrades are smoother and more stable for users.
That makes sense. So the Hurdy update is specifically focused on improving one of Ethereum's key areas, DeFi. Can you give us a quick breakdown of what DeFi is all about?
DeFi stands for decentralized finance, and it basically refers to financial services that are built on blockchain networks like Ethereum.
Okay.
So instead of relying on traditional financial institutions like banks, DeFi aims to offer things like lending, borrowing, and trading, but in a more open and decentralized way.
Right, and we talked about this a bit with Solana too, but DeFi on Ethereum has faced some challenges, right?
Yeah, definitely. While it's seen huge growth, DeFi on Ethereum has also run into problems like high transaction fees, especially when the network is busy,
Right.
and network congestion, which can make it slow and expensive to use.
Yeah, so it's like trying to drive on a highway during rush hour.
Yeah, exactly.
So these upgrades are meant to kind of address that.
Yeah, the goal of the upgrades being tested in Hudi is to make Ethereum more scalable, secure, and efficient.
Okay.
So it can better handle the demands of DeFi and make it easier and cheaper for people to use. And the market seems to be pretty optimistic about these upgrades because Ethereum's price actually went back up above $1,900 after the testnet launched.
Okay, so there's a lot of hope riding on this.
Yeah, for sure.
So it sounds like for Ethereum to stay on top of the game in this fast-moving world of decentralized applications, they really need to keep innovating and improving their technology.
Yeah, absolutely. The competition is getting tougher, so Ethereum has to keep pushing forward if they want to stay ahead.
Okay, well, that was a whirlwind tour of a very busy week in the crypto market.
Yeah.
We covered Bitcoin's price action and those key levels analysts are watching.
Yep.
The launch of Solana ETFs, which is a sign of growing institutional interest. Kathy Wood's involvement in El Salvador's push for crypto education.
Right.
The SEC dropping its lawsuit against Ripple and XRP's big price jump.
Big news.
And finally, Ethereum's launch of the Hudi testnet and what it could mean for the future of DeFi.
Ew, that's a lot.
Yeah, I know it's a lot to keep track of, but hopefully this has given you a better understanding of what's going on in the crypto world right now. Staying informed is super important in this market. So as we wrap up this deep dive, here's a final thought for you to ponder. We talked about a bunch of different developments today. Increased interest from big financial players, big changes in regulations, ongoing technological advancements, and even global education initiatives. So with all that in mind, what single factor do you think will ultimately have the biggest impact on the future of crypto? It's something to think about until our next deep dive.
Yeah, great question. There's a lot to consider.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.